Hezekiah's illness, and now Hezekiah's tragic end. Now again, remember, he had more years after this, but there's a sense in which this event, happening earlier, still tells us something about where Hezekiah is going. So, evidently, this illness must have been something really, really serious, because they heard about it in Babylon. 600 miles away across the desert, 1,000 miles by road up and down along the Euphrates River. At that time, Marduk-Baladan, son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent Hezekiah letters and a gift because he had heard of Hezekiah's illness. Wow. Now, Marduk-Baladan was in perpetual revolt against Assyria. Assyria is still the dominant power. They've got another 75 years or so to go before they finally collapse at the hands of Babylon. But at this point, Marduk-Baladan is the rebel leader. And he's sort of like Arafat, you know, the guy who led the Palestinian front for so long. They called him the Teflon man because it seemed like every time he got knocked down, it all slipped off and he got back up again. Marduk-Baladan was very much like that. He was constantly, all his life, leading revolts that the Assyrians would put down brutally, and he'd disappear into the swamps down there by the Persian Gulf, and then in a few years he's back again. So I think it's pretty clear that he says, wow, wow, does the king of that little no-account country over there called Judah, does he know something I need to know? He's just experienced what is apparently a great miracle. Go over there and talk to him. Find out what his secret is. Here is the golden opportunity. Turn over, please, to Isaiah chapter 2. If you've got the right Bible, it's on page 640. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2. In the last day, the mountain of the Lord's temple will be established as the highest of the mountains. It'll be exalted above the hills, and all nations will stream to it. Many people will come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the temple of the God of Jacob, that he might teach us his ways, so that we may walk in his paths." Here is the golden opportunity. Hezekiah, what happened to you? Oh, let me tell you about Yahweh. Let me tell you about the one who can make the shadow go back on the sundial. Let me tell you about the God who hears our prayers. The God who can extend your life 15 years. Let me tell you about him. No. Hezekiah received the envoys. Isaiah says he was delighted with the envoys. Oh, yeah. Imagine. People from the City Council of New York come to Wilmore. Wow. They're finally paying us the attention we deserve. Well, let us show you our new city hall. Let us show you the city bank book. He showed them all that was in his storehouses, the silver, the gold, the spices, the fine olive oil, his armory, and everything found among his treasures. There was nothing in his palace or in all his kingdom that Hezekiah didn't show them. And we say, oh no. These people are from Babylon, for pity's sake. They've got gold coming out their ears. The most sophisticated city in the world, even if Assyria was nominally in charge, the richest city in the world. And you're going to show off your treasury and your armaments? That's not what makes you different from them. But there is something that would make you different from them. One thing, Yahweh. Now, why do you think Hezekiah did this? Again, Hezekiah is a good man. I walked before you faithfully, with a whole heart, did what was good in your eyes. Why would that man do this? Okay. The possibility that this is the way God has blessed me, and all right, yeah, that's a possibility.
He just had a weak point, and self kind of rose to the surface.
Yeah. Maybe he thought he was better than he really was. I think he had inferiority feelings. Wow, Babylon. Great Scott, I've heard about Babylon. I've heard about their riches and their power and their wealth. I need to impress these people and make myself look a little bigger in their eyes, a little less like a grasshopper. You see, he forgot that in God's eyes, he's a giant. He forgot that with God's resources, those Babylonians are zero. But how easily we get blown away by the world. So rich, so powerful, so good looking, so slick, so smooth, so successful. And we stop looking at God and start looking at ourselves. We look mighty small compared to the world. I mean, I'm going to go to a board meeting at Wesley Biblical Seminary the end of the week. We have almost a $3 million endowment. Think about Harvard. The last time I heard, it was somewhere in the billions. What's this little dinky school in Jackson, Mississippi, compared to that? Wrong standard. Wrong standard. I like what I heard years ago. God plus one is a majority. And so he was tricked, I believe, by his own inferiority feeling out of declaring what those Babylonians desperately needed to hear. They desperately needed to hear that there is a God who can raise the dead. I was dead. Isaiah told me. They were building my coffin. And look here, I'm alive. It's God. Do you know God? So Isaiah comes to him and says, so what did you show him? And I have an awful feeling that Hezekiah tried to brazen it out. They saw everything. I showed them everything. And Isaiah said, well, that's good, because the day's going to come when Babylon's going to own it all. Gulp. Now that's an important point. I can't camp on it, but again and again we hear that, well, Isaiah couldn't have predicted the exile. That's 150 years in the future. He couldn't have named Cyrus as the Persian emperor who was going to deliver them from Babylon. It's impossible. So he didn't know that Babylon was one day going to conquer Jerusalem? See, it's not as simple as some of these scholars would try to make you think. This predictive element is woven all through these books. And you can't just pull it out here and, well, that takes care of that. No, it's all over the place. His oracles against the nations begin with Babylon. So, I think it's very clear. God has told Isaiah, no, Assyria is not the problem. You think Assyria is the problem. No, it's Babylon that's a problem. Huh? Babylon, yeah, they're rich, they're sophisticated, they're powerful, but hey, they're just a province of the great Assyrian Empire. Babylon is the problem. And one day, Hezekiah, your sons will be eunuchs, castrated, servants of the king of Babylon. The Davidic dynasty? And here's where you sort of hang your head. The word of the Lord you have spoken is good, Hezekiah replied, for he thought there will be peace and security in my days. Oh, good, it's not going to happen to me. It's going to happen to my descendants. That'll be their problem. Let them deal with it. But I don't have to deal with it. Oh, dear Lord. So what happened? What happened is that Hezekiah saw trust as a one-shot thing. He didn't see it as a continued way of life. Okay, some crisis happens in my life. I trust the Lord. But day after day after day after day in my life, I trust myself. Trust my abilities. Trust my energy. Trust my wisdom. oh goodness, God, I'm in a mess. I'm trusting you now. No. And in this sense, Hezekiah then embodies what was the problem among his people. Because we're going to move in just a moment to look at his son Manasseh. Well, here's Ahaz. Here's Manasseh. Ahaz died in 716. Manasseh, as a 12-year-old, came to the throne in 696. How many years between those two? 20. Now, in between is Hezekiah. And we're going to move to that next section.